The morning sun peeked through the blinds as Elon scrolled through his phone, sipping his black coffee. He wasn't looking at stock prices or checking on his companies. Instead, a news article had caught his eye. A story about a retired teacher who couldn't get a loan despite having perfect credit, all because he looked too poor when he walked into the bank. Elon frowned, placing his mug down harder than he meant to. The coffee sloshed but didn't spill. Something about the story bothered him deeply. Was this really how things worked in the real world? He'd been rich for so long now that he sometimes forgot what it was like to be judged by appearance alone. "Hey, you're going to be late," called his assistant from the doorway of his kitchen. "Board meeting in 40 minutes. Cancel it," Elon said suddenly, still staring at his phone. "I'm sorry, what?" His assistant looked genuinely confused. "The SpaceX board has been waiting for this presentation for weeks." Elon looked up, his eyes bright with the spark of a new idea. "Tell them something came up. A personal project. I'll reschedule for next week." His assistant knew that look all too well. It meant Elon had stumbled onto something that had captured his full attention. And nothing would distract him now. "I need to run an experiment," Elon continued, already pulling out his laptop. "Get me the number for that makeup artist who worked on the sci-fi film we funded last year. The one who did all the special effects makeup." 3 hours later, Elon sat in a downtown apartment that served as a studio for Gina, one of Hollywood's most talented makeup artists. Her walls were covered with photos of actors transformed into aliens, zombies, and historical figures. All her work. "So let me get this straight," Gina said, mixing something in a small bowl. "You want me to make you look homeless? Like actually homeless?" Elon nodded, excitement evident in his voice. "Not just homeless. I want to be unrecognizable. I want to look like I've been living on the streets for years." Gina raised an eyebrow. "Can I ask why?" Elon hesitated before answering. He trusted Gina. She had worked with enough celebrities to know the value of discretion. "I heard something today that bothered me. About how people get treated differently based on how they look, especially in places like banks. I want to see if it's true." "So you're going to what? Walk into a bank looking homeless and see what happens?" Gina asked, starting to apply a base layer to Elon's face. "Exactly," he replied. "I'll go to my own bank where I keep millions. Where they know me, or at least they know the clean-cut billionaire version of me." Gina worked silently for a few minutes, her skilled fingers applying layers that made Elon's skin look weathered and rough. "You know, most people would just read a book about economic inequality or donate to a charity," she said finally. Elon gave a small smile that crinkled the makeup slightly. "I'm not most people. I need to see things with my own eyes. The transformation took nearly 4 hours. Gina didn't just change his face, she created a whole character. She aged him with wrinkles around his eyes and mouth. She made his skin look sun-damaged and rough. She applied fake dirt under his fingernails and created the illusion of unwashed hair with special wax. When she finished with his face, a costume designer friend of hers brought in clothes. Worn-out jeans with authentic fraying, not the kind you buy pre-distressed. A stained t-shirt, a jacket that had seen better days, and boots with soles starting to separate from the leather. Elon stared at his reflection in the full-length mirror. The man looking back at him wasn't just disguised. He was transformed. No one would recognize the tech billionaire in this weathered face. "This is perfect," he said, his voice soft with amazement. "One last touch," Gina said, handing him a small bottle. "This doesn't smell great, but it's theatrical. It mimics the smell of someone who hasn't showered in a while. Use it sparingly." Elon took it, understanding how attention to detail could make or break his experiment. "What are you hoping to learn from this?" Gina asked as she packed up her supplies. Elon thought for a moment. "I'm not sure yet. I guess I want to know if what I've built, all this technology, all these companies, if they're actually making the world better. Or if we're just creating fancy toys for rich people while others get left behind." Gina nodded, seeming to appreciate his honesty. As he prepared to leave, Elon realized he couldn't just walk out looking like this. His driver would recognize him and the experiment would be over before it began. "I need a ride," he said, pulling out his phone to call for a taxi. "Wait," Gina stopped him. "If you're really doing this, you need to commit all the way. No fancy phone, no credit cards, nothing that would give you away." She was right. Elon placed his phone, wallet, and watch on her table. "I'll keep these safe," she promised. "How will you get downtown?" "I'll take the bus," Elon said, the idea striking him as both obvious and alien. He couldn't remember the last time he'd used public transportation. Gina handed him a worn backpack. "Here, put a few dollars in there, not too much. And remember to slouch a little when you walk. Rich people stand straight because they've never had to carry the weight of the world." Elon took the backpack, touched by her insight. "Thank you for understanding." The bus ride downtown was an education in itself. People avoided sitting next to him. A woman clutched her purse tighter when he walked past. A group of teenagers snickered and pointed. Elon absorbed it all, feeling something shift inside him. Not just anger at how he was being treated, but a deeper sadness that this was someone's daily reality. He got off the bus 3 blocks from First National Bank, where he kept several business accounts. The bank knew him well, or rather they knew CEO Elon. As he approached the gleaming glass building, his heart beat faster. This wasn't just about proving a point anymore. This felt important, like something he needed to understand on a personal level. Standing outside, Elon watched people stream in and out of the revolving doors. Well-dressed professionals with briefcases. Couples in casual but clean clothes. Everyone looking like they belonged. Did he have the courage to go through with this? What if someone recognized him despite the disguise? What if security threw him out immediately? What if nothing happened at all and his experiment proved nothing? Taking a deep breath, Elon adjusted his tattered jacket and slouched his shoulders as Gina had suggested. He hadn't prepared a script or a specific request. That would make it feel too artificial. Instead, he'd go in with a simple question about opening an account, something any person might want to do. He joined the stream of people entering the bank, ignoring the looks he received. Inside, the air conditioning hit him like a wave. The marble floors gleamed. The security guard near the entrance immediately turned toward him, eyes narrowing slightly. This was it. The experiment had begun. Elon felt strangely calm now that he was committed. Whatever happened next would be a glimpse into a world he rarely saw. The world as experienced by those without wealth or status. And no matter what happened, he knew it would change how he saw things forever. As he shuffled toward the help desk, he caught his reflection in the polished surface of a column. The face looking back was unrecognizable, not just because of Gina's makeup skills, but because of something in the eyes. Uncertainty, vulnerability, emotions the real Elon rarely allowed himself to show. For the first time in years, he was about to enter a situation where his name, his money, and his power couldn't help him. He was just a man in dirty clothes, asking for help in a world that might not want to give it. And strangely enough, he had never felt more alive. Elon stepped further into the bank, the polished marble floor reflecting the overhead lights. The security guard's eyes followed him as he moved toward the help desk. A woman in a crisp blue suit stood behind the counter, greeting customers with a practiced smile that vanished when she spotted Elon. He approached slowly, feeling oddly nervous. This wasn't like launching a rocket or unveiling a new car. This was something more personal, more raw. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice noticeably cooler than it had been with the customer before him. "Yes," Elon said, making his voice slightly rough. "I'd like to open an account." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "Do you have identification with you today?" Elon nodded and pulled out the wallet Gina had given him. Inside was a legitimate ID, his own driver's license from years ago that had expired but still showed his name. The photo was old enough and his appearance now different enough that no one would make the connection. He handed it over, watching as she examined it with obvious skepticism. "This is expired," she said, sliding it back across the counter. "It's all I have," Elon replied honestly. The woman sighed. "Well, we can't open an account without current identification. You'll need to get a new ID first." A reasonable request, but Elon noticed how her tone implied he wouldn't or couldn't do that. He decided to push a little further. "I have some cash," he said, pulling a wrinkled $100 bill from his pocket, part of the prop money Gina had given him. "I just need somewhere safe to keep it." The woman's expression shifted subtly, surprise, then suspicion. "Where did you get that?" The implication was clear. Someone who looked like him couldn't possibly have come by that much money honestly. "I've been saving," Elon said, letting a hint of defensiveness creep into his voice. "I do odd jobs." A well-dressed couple waiting behind him whispered to each other, moving a step back. The security guard had drifted closer, standing just within earshot. "Well," the woman said, her voice taking on the exaggerated patience one might use with a child. Even if we could open an account for you, we have minimum balance requirements, and there would be monthly fees if you don't maintain that balance. What's the minimum? Elon asked. $500, she replied quickly. Elon knew this was a lie. This particular bank's basic checking account had a $50 minimum. He'd checked their website just yesterday out of curiosity. Your website says $50, he said quietly. The woman blinked, clearly not expecting him to know this. Well, yes, for our basic account. But given your situation, I thought you might not be able to maintain that balance long term. The fees could add up. Elon noticed a shift in her approach. She was now positioning her dismissal as concern for his financial well-being. It was clever and probably worked on most people who didn't know better. I see, he said. Could I speak to a financial advisor? I actually have some questions about investing. Now the woman looked genuinely amused, as if he'd told a joke. Our financial advisors are quite busy today. They typically work with clients who have significant assets to manage. How significant? Elon pressed. She seemed annoyed by his persistence. Our wealth management services typically begin at portfolios of $100,000 or more. Another lie. He knew this bank offered financial advice to anyone with an account. Is there someone else I could talk to? Elon asked, his voice steady despite the frustration building inside him. The woman glanced at the growing line behind him. Sir, there are other people waiting. Perhaps I could give you this pamphlet about our basic banking services, and maybe the community center downtown might be better suited to help someone in your position. She slid a brochure across the counter. Elon took it, noting how she pulled her hand back quickly to avoid any chance their fingers might touch. Thank you for your time, he said quietly, tucking the pamphlet into his pocket. As he stepped away from the counter, Elon felt eyes on him from every direction. Customers watched him warily. A mother pulled her child closer as he passed. The security guard had moved to stand directly by the exit, clearly intending to make sure he left. Instead of leaving, Elon moved toward the seating area where customers waited to meet with bankers. He sat down in one of the plush chairs, ignoring the look of alarm on the face of the woman next to him, who promptly gathered her belongings and moved to another seat. From this vantage point, Elon could observe the bank operations. He watched as a man in a wrinkled but clean button-down shirt was directed to a banker immediately. He watched as elderly customers were treated with patience and respect. He watched as a young couple, clearly not wealthy but presentably dressed, were handed account opening forms without question. The contrast was striking and undeniable. After about 15 minutes, a different bank employee, a young man in a dark suit, approached him. Sir, if you're not waiting for an appointment, I'm going to have to ask you to conduct your business or exit the building. The message was clear. His mere presence was unwelcome. I was hoping to speak with someone about your services, Elon replied. The young man's face hardened. I believe my colleague already assisted you at the counter. If you don't have current identification, we can't help you today. Elon stood up slowly. Is it the ID that's the problem, or is it how I look? The directness of the question caught the banker off guard. He blinked rapidly, his professional veneer cracking slightly. Sir, we have policies. Would these policies apply to everyone or just people who look like they don't have money? Elon pressed. The young man glanced toward the security guard, who was already moving in their direction. I think it's time for you to leave, he said quietly. Elon nodded, having seen exactly what he came to see. As he walked toward the exit, he noticed a familiar face entering the bank. His own personal banker, a man named Thomas who had handled his business accounts for years. For a moment, Elon considered revealing himself right then, but something held him back. This experiment wasn't just about proving a point to the bank staff. It was about truly understanding an experience so different from his daily life. Outside on the sidewalk, Elon felt a complex mix of emotions washing over him. Anger at the treatment he'd received, sadness that this was reality for so many people, and guilt. Guilt that he lived in such a bubble of privilege that he had to disguise himself to even glimpse this side of society. He sat down on a bench across from the bank, watching people come and go through the revolving doors. The same doors that had welcomed others had practically pushed him out. All because of how he looked, taking out his burner phone, a basic flip phone Gina had given him, Elon made a call. "It's me," he said when she answered. "It worked." "Too well, actually. Are you okay?" Gina asked, concern evident in her voice. "Yes," Elon replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. "But I'm not done yet. I need you to bring my regular clothes to the coffee shop on 4th Street and call Thomas at First National. Tell him I need to see him urgently at the bank in 1 hour." "What are you planning?" Gina asked. Elon watched as another shabbily dressed man tried to enter the bank and was immediately intercepted by the security guard. "I'm planning to finish what I started," he said, his resolve hardening. It's time for part 2 of the experiment. The coffee shop on 4th Street buzzed with afternoon customers as Elon sat in a corner booth, still in his homeless disguise. He sipped a black coffee, the cheapest item on the menu, and watched as the barista kept glancing nervously in his direction. He'd been asked twice if he was actually going to order something, despite having a paid-for drink right in front of him. The door chimed, and Gina walked in carrying a sleek black duffel bag. She spotted Elon immediately but gave no indication she knew him, exactly as they'd planned. Instead, she ordered a latte and casually made her way to his table. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked loudly enough for the barista to hear. "All the other tables are full." They weren't, but Elon nodded and Gina slid into the booth across from him. "You look terrible," she whispered with a small smile. "I did too good a job." "You have no idea," Elon replied quietly. "It was worse than I imagined." Gina slid the duffel bag under the table with her foot. "Everything you asked for is in there. Your assistant wasn't happy about the sudden wardrobe request, by the way." "I'll explain later," Elon said. "Thomas is meeting me at the bank in 40 minutes. Gina nodded toward the restroom. "Better get changed. Your homeless persona is making the staff nervous." Elon glanced over at the barista, who was indeed watching them with suspicion. He took the bag and headed to the single-occupancy bathroom at the back of the cafe. Inside, he locked the door and opened the duffel. There were his normal clothes, a simple but expensive dark gray suit, crisp white shirt, and polished shoes. There was also a small kit from Gina with makeup remover and cleansing wipes. Elon looked at himself in the mirror one last time as the disheveled homeless man he'd become. The experience had been brief, just a few hours, yet somehow life-changing. He'd gotten the smallest taste of what it meant to be invisible, or worse, visible only as a problem to be removed. Methodically, he began to wash away the makeup. As his true face emerged, he felt a strange reluctance. Once he became Elon Musk again, would he forget what he'd learned? Would the bubble of privilege close around him again? 20 minutes later, a different man emerged from the bathroom. Gone was the hunched posture and weathered face. Elon Musk, billionaire, innovator, one of the most recognizable people on the planet, straightened his tie and walked out of the coffee shop. The same barista who had watched him suspiciously now looked up and did a double take. Clearly confused by the transformation but unable to place exactly why this well-dressed man seemed familiar. Outside, Elon's personal driver waited with a sleek black car. The driver held the door open, his face betraying no surprise at his boss's unusual request for pickup at a random coffee shop. "First National Bank," Elon instructed as he settled into the leather seat. The drive took less than 5 minutes. As the car pulled up to the curb, Elon could see the same security guard standing at the entrance who had watched him so closely earlier. "Wait here," he told his driver. "This shouldn't take long." Elon straightened his shoulders and walked through the revolving doors with the confident stride of a man accustomed to owning any room he entered. The difference in how people reacted was immediate and striking. The security guard nodded respectfully. Customers glanced at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to awe as recognition dawned. A bank employee walking across the lobby almost tripped when he noticed who had just entered, and there at the help desk was the same woman who had dismissed him earlier. She was helping another customer, but glanced up automatically at the commotion Elon's entrance had caused. Her eyes widened. Elon walked directly to the desk, waiting patiently for her to finish with the current customer. When she turned to him, her face had transformed into the brightest, most welcoming smile. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice warm and almost breathless. "What an unexpected honor. How can I help you today?" "I have an appointment with Thomas," Elon replied evenly. "But while I wait, I was hoping you could tell me about your basic checking accounts, specifically the minimum deposit requirements. The woman blinked, momentarily confused by the mundane request from a billionaire. Of course, she said quickly. Our basic account has a minimum opening deposit of $50, and no minimum balance requirement after that. That's interesting, Elon said, maintaining steady eye contact. Because earlier today someone was told it was $500. The woman's smile faltered slightly. There must have been some confusion. It's definitely $50. And your financial advisors, Elon continued. Are they only available to clients with large portfolios? Now she looked uncomfortable. No, Mr. Musk. Our advisors are available to assist all our clients. Before she could say more, Thomas appeared from a hallway leading to the private banking offices. He was a tall man with gray hair and glasses who had handled Elon's business accounts for years. Elon, he called, walking briskly toward them. I got your message. Is everything all right? Thomas. Elon greeted him with a handshake. Thank you for making time. I'd like to speak with you and whoever manages this branch, privately if possible. Thomas looked concerned but nodded immediately. Of course. The branch manager is in her office. We can use the conference room. As they walked toward the back, Elon turned to the woman at the desk. You'll be joining us too, he said. It wasn't a request. Her face drained of color as she stammered, I need to find someone to cover the desk. I'm sure you can work that out, Elon replied, his voice pleasant but firm. In the elegant conference room with its mahogany table and city views, they were joined by the branch manager, a poised woman in her 50s, and the young male banker who had asked Elon to leave earlier. Neither of them knew why they had been summoned, but Thomas had simply said Mr. Musk needed to discuss something important. When everyone was seated, Elon remained standing. He looked at each person in turn, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I visited this bank earlier today, he finally said, not as Elon Musk, but as someone else, someone who needed help. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the pamphlet he'd been given earlier, placing it on the table. The woman from the help desk stared at it, her eyes growing wide with dawning horror. I came in looking for banking services, Elon continued. I had cash to deposit. I asked about opening an account. I requested to speak with a financial advisor about investing. He turned to the young banker. I sat in your lobby until you asked me to leave. Understanding washed over their faces as the impossible truth sank in. The branch manager looked from Elon to her employees, confusion and alarm evident in her expression. I don't understand, she said. You came in, disguised? As someone homeless, Elon confirmed, and I experienced firsthand how people in that situation are treated by this institution. The help desk woman had gone completely pale. Mr. Musk, if I had any idea it was you— That's exactly the point, Elon interrupted, his voice sharper now. You shouldn't have to recognize me to treat me with dignity. The fact that you would have behaved differently if you'd known who I was is precisely the problem. The young banker looked down at his hands. The branch manager seemed genuinely distressed. I want to be clear, Elon said, his tone softening slightly. I'm not here to get anyone fired. I'm not here to shame you personally. I'm here because this matters, and because I'm in a position to do something about it. Thomas, who had been silent throughout this revelation, finally spoke. Elon, I had no idea. I'm sorry this happened. Don't be sorry, Elon replied. Be better. We all need to be better. He looked around the table again. That's why I'd like to propose something. A partnership between my foundation and this bank to address the very issues I saw today. The atmosphere in the room shifted from fear to cautious relief, then to genuine interest as Elon began outlining his thoughts on how financial institutions could better serve marginalized populations. As he spoke, Elon realized that this experiment, originally conceived as a simple test, had evolved into something far more significant. Something that might actually create lasting change. The conference room fell silent as Elon took a seat at the head of the table. The branch manager, a woman with silver-streaked hair named Mrs. Chen, cleared her throat. Mr. Musk, while I appreciate your unconventional approach, I want to assure you that First National has strict policies against discrimination of any kind. Elon nodded, keeping his expression neutral. Policies are good, but I'm more interested in practices. What happened today wasn't just one person being rude. It was systematic. The young banker shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The woman from the help desk stared at her folded hands. May I ask what specifically occurred? Mrs. Chen inquired, glancing at her employees. I was told your minimum balance requirement was 10 times higher than it actually is, Elon began. I was denied access to a financial advisor. I was asked where I got my money, implying it couldn't have been earned honestly. And ultimately I was asked to leave the building for simply sitting in your lobby. Thomas, Elon's personal banker, winced at each point. The thing is, Elon continued, none of this was done with obvious malice. Everyone was polite on the surface. It was all wrapped in language that sounded reasonable, protecting me from fees I couldn't afford, not wasting my time with services I couldn't use. Mrs. Chen's professional composure cracked slightly. Mr. Musk, I can't defend what happened, and I won't try to. But I would like to understand what you hope to achieve here. Elon leaned forward. I want to make this a learning moment, not just for this branch, but for the entire banking industry. Most people in your position will never know what it's like to be turned away because of how they look. You'll never experience the subtle dismissals, the assumptions, the doors that close before you can even reach for the handle. The help desk woman finally looked up, her eyes damp. I didn't realize. I thought I was helping, steering toward options that would be better suited. Better suited based on what? Elon asked, his voice gentle but persistent. You knew nothing about me except what I was wearing and how I looked. We see people coming in off the street sometimes, the young banker said defensively. They cause problems, make other customers uncomfortable. And how many of them just needed help? Elon countered. How many had legitimate financial questions but were turned away before they could ask them? No one had an answer for that. Elon softened his approach. Look, I understand the reality you're dealing with. You have security concerns. You have business interests. But there has to be a better way to address those concerns without shutting out an entire segment of the population from basic financial services. Mrs. Chen straightened in her chair. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Musk? A partnership, Elon replied, between my foundation and First National, a pilot program here at this branch that could eventually expand nationwide. Interest flickered across the faces around the table. What kind of program? Thomas asked. Elon stood up and began to pace, his energy building as he outlined his vision. First, training. Not the usual corporate box-checking kind, but something meaningful. Your staff spends time volunteering at shelters and community centers, getting to know the people they've been turning away. He turned to the help desk woman. Imagine if you'd spent time talking to people experiencing homelessness, hearing their stories. Would you have been so quick to assume the worst about me today? She shook her head slowly. Second, Elon continued, we create new financial products specifically designed for people trying to get back on their feet. Accounts with no minimum balance requirements, no overdraft fees, financial literacy workshops. The branch manager was taking notes now, her initial defensiveness replaced by genuine engagement. Third, we renovate a section of this branch to be more welcoming to everyone, a community space where people can get financial advice regardless of their current situation. That would require significant resources, Mrs. Chen noted, though her tone suggested interest rather than resistance. Which my foundation would provide, Elon replied, in exchange for a genuine commitment from First National to change how things work. Thomas leaned forward. Elon, this is ambitious, but I think it has real potential. Not just as a PR move, but as something that could make a difference. Elon stopped pacing and placed his hands on the table, looking at each person in turn. This isn't about good publicity. If it was, I'd be tweeting about what happened today instead of sitting here talking with you. He pulled out his phone and set it on the table. In fact, let's agree right now. Nothing about my visit today leaves this room. No press releases about Elon Musk's homeless disguise. No viral social media posts. What matters isn't the stunt, it's what we do with what we learned from it. Relief washed over the employees' faces. Why? Mrs. Chen asked. You could use this to embarrass us, to force our hand. Because shame doesn't create lasting change, Elon replied simply. Pride in doing something meaningful does. The young banker, who had been quiet for some time, finally spoke up. My grandfather was homeless for a while after he lost his job in the 80s. He always said the hardest part wasn't being without a home. It was being treated like he wasn't a person anymore. Elon nodded. Exactly. And that's what we need to fix, starting here. What do you need from us to move forward? Mrs. Chen asked, her initial wariness now replaced by determination. First, I need you to acknowledge that what happened today wasn't just a few employees making bad calls. It was the result of a culture that needs to change. Mrs. Chen didn't hesitate. I acknowledge that, and I take responsibility for it as the leader of this branch. Second, I need a commitment to work with my team on developing this program properly. That means time, resources, and openness to doing things differently. You have my commitment, she replied. And third, Elon said, looking at the help desk woman and the young banker, I need you two specifically to be part of this. Not because I want to punish you, but because you've seen both sides of this now. You understand the problem in a way others don't. They exchanged surprised glances. You want us to help? The woman asked. I do, Elon confirmed. Your perspective will be valuable. And I think you've learned something important today that shouldn't go to waste. The tension that had filled the room when the meeting began had transformed into something else, a shared sense of purpose, of possibility. Thomas checked his watch. Elon, we should wrap up soon. You have that call with Tokyo in 30 minutes. Elon nodded. Let's set a timeline then. My team will be in touch tomorrow with a formal proposal. We'll aim to launch the pilot program in 60 days. In the meantime, I'd like weekly updates on the progress. As the meeting concluded and hands were shaken, Elon noticed something had changed in how the bank employees looked at him. The awe and intimidation had been replaced by something closer to respect, not just for his wealth or status, but for his willingness to put himself in someone else's shoes. Outside, as he walked to his waiting car, Elon looked back at the gleaming bank building. What had started as a simple experiment had evolved into something with real potential to create change. He thought about the countless people who experienced what he had today, but who didn't have the power to walk back in as a billionaire and demand better. His phone buzzed with notifications, endless demands for his attention, problems to solve, decisions to make. But as his driver pulled away from the curb, Elon found himself thinking not about rockets or electric cars, but about the look on that banker's face when he talked about his grandfather. Sometimes the most important innovations weren't technological at all. Sometimes they were simply new ways of seeing each other's humanity. 6 months later, Elon stood at the back of a crowded room in what used to be an unused storage area of First National Bank's main branch. The space had been transformed into something the banking industry had never seen before. A welcoming community financial center with comfortable seating, free coffee, and most importantly, financial advisors who were there to help anyone who walked through the door, no minimum balance required. Today was the official launch of what they'd named the Open Door Banking Initiative, though it had actually been operating quietly for several weeks. Elon had insisted on a soft launch before any publicity, wanting to make sure the program worked in practice, not just in theory. From his spot at the back, he watched as Mrs. Chen, now the regional director for the initiative, addressed the gathered crowd of bank employees, community leaders, and media. Banking isn't a privilege, she was saying, her voice confident and passionate. It's a necessity in today's world, and for too long, our industry has put up barriers that kept people out instead of welcoming them in. Elon smiled slightly, remembering how defensive she had been in that first meeting. The transformation in her thinking had been remarkable and genuine. Once she understood the problem, she had become the program's most devoted champion. In the front row sat the woman from the help desk, now the community outreach coordinator for the program. Beside her was the young banker who had asked Elon to leave that day, now responsible for training other bank employees on recognizing and overcoming unconscious bias. Our pilot program has already opened over 200 new accounts for people who were previously unbanked, Mrs. Chen continued. We've provided financial literacy workshops to more than 500 community members. And perhaps most importantly, we've changed how we see our role as a financial institution. The media had been told this was simply a new community banking initiative led by First National with support from the Musk Foundation. Elon had kept his promise. The story of his disguise never leaked. This wasn't about him or a publicity stunt. It was about creating real change. As Mrs. Chen wrapped up her remarks, she gestured toward the back of the room. I'd like to thank Elon Musk and his foundation for their support in making this vision a reality. Mr. Musk, would you like to say a few words? All heads turned as Elon made his way to the front. He hadn't planned to speak, but seeing the results of the past 6 months' work, he felt compelled to. "Thank you," he began simply. "But the real thanks goes to everyone who embraced this idea and turned it into something tangible, particularly the staff here who were willing to look at their own biases and work to overcome them." He paused, making eye contact with the help desk woman and the young banker in the front row. 6 months ago, I walked into this bank looking for help and I was turned away. Not because the help wasn't available, but because of how I looked. He didn't mention his disguise, allowing those who didn't know the full story to assume he was speaking generally. Today I walked in and saw something different. I saw people being welcomed regardless of their appearance or background. I saw barriers being removed instead of reinforced. There was a murmur of approval from the crowd. But what matters most isn't what I saw, Elon continued. It's what others are seeing and experiencing every day. The single mother who can now cash her paycheck without paying excessive fees. The elderly man living on a fixed income who has someone to help him manage his finances. The young person working their first job who's learning how to build credit responsibly. After the formal presentation concluded, Elon mingled with the crowd, listening more than talking. He found himself in conversation with an older man, wearing clean but worn clothes. Exactly the type of person who might have been viewed with suspicion before. "I never thought I'd have a bank account again," the man told Elon, not recognizing who he was talking to. "Lost mine years ago when I couldn't keep enough money in it. The fees ate everything I had. But now," he held up a new debit card proudly, "no fees, no minimum. And they treat me like a person, you know." Elon nodded, that simple statement hitting him harder than any statistic could have. As the event wound down, Mrs. Chen pulled Elon aside to a quiet corner. "The board voted yesterday," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "We're expanding the program to all our branches nationwide over the next 18 months. And 3 other banks have reached out wanting to implement similar initiatives." "That's incredible," Elon replied, genuinely impressed by how quickly things were moving. "There's something else," she added, pulling out her tablet and opening a document. "We've been tracking the business impact and the results are surprising some of our more skeptical executives." She showed him a chart of new accounts, deposits, and customer satisfaction scores. All were trending sharply upward. "Turns out," she said with a small smile, "treating people with dignity isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business." Later that afternoon, Elon returned to the bank alone. The event was over, the media gone. The community center was now open for regular business, and he wanted to see how it functioned on a normal day. He took a seat in one of the comfortable chairs and observed. At one table, the young banker who had once asked him to leave was now patiently explaining a savings plan to a teenage boy and his grandmother. At another, the former help desk woman was helping a man in a construction uniform set up mobile banking on his phone. Thomas, Elon's personal banker, spotted him and came over. "Quite different from 6 months ago," Thomas said, gesturing around the room. "It is," Elon agreed. "Though I'm surprised you recognized me without the disguise," Thomas laughed. "I still can't believe you pulled that off." "Did you ever think it would lead to all this?" Elon shook his head. "I just wanted to understand something I'd heard about. I didn't plan for it to become this." "Sometimes the best innovations happen that way," Thomas replied. "You see a problem, you try to understand it, and the solution follows naturally." As they spoke, the door opened and a disheveled man walked in hesitantly. Elon watched, curious to see how he would be received. The security guard, the same one who had watched Elon so suspiciously 6 months earlier, approached the man with a smile. "Welcome to First National," he said warmly. "Can I help you find what you're looking for today?" The man explained that he needed to cash a check but didn't have an account. Instead of being directed to the door, he was guided to a desk where someone could assist him. "You know," Elon said quietly to Thomas, "when I was building rockets and electric cars, I thought technology was the key to changing the world. But sometimes it's just about changing how we see each other." Thomas nodded. "The question is, what are you going to disguise yourself as next? I should warn our restaurant partners that you might show up as a food delivery person." Elon laughed. "No more disguises for now. But there are plenty of other institutions that could use a similar wake-up call." As he left the bank, Elon thought about how a single day of walking in someone else's shoes had cascaded into real change. The experiment hadn't just revealed problems in the banking system. It had revealed something about human nature, too. People could change when they saw problems clearly. They could grow when given the opportunity. Outside, the city rushed by, full of people who would never know about his experiment. But some of them would walk into this bank tomorrow and be treated with dignity they might not find elsewhere. Some would get financial help they desperately needed. Some would take small steps toward stability and security that hadn't been available to them before. And that, Elon decided, was worth far more than any technological breakthrough or business success he'd ever achieved.